Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh, Lord, yeah.
Bob Fitrakis bringing you the other side of the news. Sitting in for Danny Dougan, my usual co-host, is in fact my long-term co-conspirator, my public consort, Harvey Wasserman.
Just don't call me Jeff Epstein.
Poisoning their brainwashed minds.
Well, actually, I know Jeff Epstein. The Jeff Epstein that was the son of the mayor of Chicago.
All right.
There you go.
And in fact, his father, a Republican, was actually a very nice progressive guy.
He was, and he ran against Harold Washington. And Jeff announced, the good Jeff Epstein announced that he was going to vote for Harold Washington as opposed to his father. That was a good one.
And his father actually ended up denouncing people that were racist, said he didn't want the racist vote.
That's right. He was good. But, Jeff, they're probably going to name a nuclear power plant after Jeff Epstein. That'll be my, Jeffrey Epstein. That'll be my guess. Rename Davis-Besse, the Jeffrey Epstein nuclear plant, when we shut it down.
And more is coming out about Jeff Epstein, who I wrote about more than 20 years ago, pointing out that he was up to mischief in Columbus, Ohio.
We have some great celebrities from Columbus, Ohio now. Les Wexner, of course, and Larry Flint. It's hard to beat Larry Flint as a world-class.
Wasn't he from Kentucky, but he came here?
He came here. He had a house in Bexley, right near the governor's mansion. Or maybe it was the governor's mansion.
Near the Columbus School for Girls, which was very controversial at the time.
Yes.
It was kind of a pinkish mansion.
Yeah, right. Yeah, now he's out in L.A., where all good Columbus boys go.
All right.
But we have had a big week, Bob. The House, the Ohio legislature passed the...
Bought and paid for.
Passed the HB6, the bailout of the nuclear power plant, which is two of them, which is absolutely insane. As if to herald the event, we had a 4.0 Richter scale earthquake in the lake, or near the lake, and near the Perry nuclear plant. And here's a great trivial fact for all you Ohioans. Did you know that the Perry nuclear plant on the shores of Lake Erie is the first nuclear power plant in the United States to be damaged by an earthquake? I grew up in Columbus. I never heard the word earthquake.
It might need $2 billion bailout then.
Yeah, really. Unbelievable.
They should have used that to even get more money from these wackos. Again, if you look at the analysis, it didn't seem like facts mattered in this decision.
Facts? We don't need those stinking facts. We got plenty. We got First Energy money, which is handed to it from the ratepayers, approved by the PUC, which then they turn around to buy the legislature to rip off the ratepayers. It's like recycling. It's a closed loop.
Well, what about jobs? Again, that was one of their key talking points. Did you want these people to lose their jobs?
Yes, because the point is that the nuclear plant, which generates power way over market, costs jobs because it kills the
business
business.
In the state was opposed to it, was it not?
Yeah, everybody was opposed to it. It's amazing how a little cash at the state legislature can overcome.
Apparently, it was $150,000 people are pointing to. So, okay, so I'm used to them getting bought, but why so cheap, Harvey?
Yeah, well,
this happened in Kentucky a while back. You may recall the Kentucky legislature was being systematically bribed. The legislators there were taking money, and the people in Kentucky were mainly appalled because they were taking $50 a vote.
Yeah.
And they
Come on, guys.
And the public opinion poll, the consensus, kind of the medium, the mean was that it should be at least $500
right.
if you're going to be bribed.
Right, it's insulting because in New York it's like $5,000.
Right.
And in California it's probably
But cost
20,
of living.
25. Yeah, right. I mean, it's sickening. So the legislature has approved a bill that will tax essentially all ratepayers in Ohio, even those not in the first energy regime, to pay for these two nuclear plants.
Will you admit you hate Indiana?
And well, there's there's a coal plant in Indiana that they build out also. I mean, it's just
So
talking
the
about
ratepayers
chutzpah.
in Ohio are going to pay for an obsolete,
Coal burner,
polluting
50
coal
years
plant.
old, 50 years old in
Indiana.
Indiana, and they passed this. I mean, how can you make this up? And it's and not only that, but the top 7 executives at First Energy are paid collectively about $25 million a year. So you have a $150 million bailout, and $25 million goes straight into the pockets of 7 executives at First Energy, including $9.5 million of that straight to Chuck Jones.
And there's $25 million left over, so they can pay off cronies, lovers, partners.
Whoever. You know, I mean,
There's a little extra cash to go around.
it's just mind-boggling. But $25 million right off. That's the VIG, right? It's right off the top, right off the top into the pockets of seven. Count them, 7 executives at First Energy. $25 million, including $9.5 million straight out for Chuck Jones, the brilliant CEO of First Energy who put the company into bankruptcy. There should be a state law. If you go into bankruptcy, the ratepayers of Ohio have to bail you out no matter what business you're in.
So what? They're wetting their beak a little here.
Yeah.
But they're giving us green energy. I
They're
heard
giving
it.
right. Anybody who know
Mike
wants.
DeWine, the governor, said it was non-carbon.
Yeah, right. It's
He literally said that on TV.
First of all nuclear plants emit carbon. It's carbon-14. They do emit it, and heat and radiation. It's the big 3: carbon, heat, and radiation. And Mike, I got to say one thing. I don't think that John Kasich would have signed this bill, ironically. But, we don't have to pursue that. But I don't think he would have signed it. But Mike DeWine, what does he care? He's like he's like with the little guy that traipsed around with Bonnie and Clyde.
Kind of looks like him.
Yeah, exactly. So, it's an outrage. So there is a movement, apparently, to put a repeal on the ballot. It will be a straight repeal, as best we can tell, to just repeal HB6.
Breaking news. Will Harvey Wasserman be hanging out with J. Kenneth Blackwell?
We are desperate.
Right-wing former treasurer of the state and the Koch brothers.
Yes, well, we're going to make a film. Bob and I are making a buddy film called Desperately Seeking J. Kenneth Blackwell. And we want to get a picture with him because I guess he's hired by the oil and gas guys to oppose the nuclear bailout. It's hilarious.
He's working on one of those anti-tax
Yeah,
institutes.
Grover Norquist.
And a family institute.
Well, we're in the same boat here with the anti-tax people. And I am all for a free market in energy. At this point in time, wind and solar have come on so strong, along with batteries and LED efficiency, that I would oppose. If we could across the board wipe out all subsidies for energy, and require those nuclear plants to get insurance along the way. I am for.
So they start with a huge, massive subsidy from the get-go.
Right.
Because they can't get insurance from the private sector.
Exactly. Not since 1957. In 1957, the Congress passed a bill called the Price-Anderson Act. And it said, well, we understand you nuclear guys, it's a little early and people are a little antsy about nuclear technology. So we're going to underwrite nuclear insurance. The federal government will assume liability in case of a major accident for the next 15 years until you get, private insurance. And that was 1957. That is 62 years ago. and they still don't have private
And
insurance.
I had a good source, Ready Kilowatt, who told me that it would be so cheap you wouldn't even have to meter it.
Well, you know what has happened? Now, this is quite amazing. You're right. It was Lewis Strauss was the chairman of the Atomic Energy Commission. And he went around saying that nuclear power would be too cheap to meter. Now, I was in a debate, and my debate opponent actually denied that he said this, but it was 100% true, easily found. But we actually are now getting electricity too cheap to meter from windmills in Texas, because these windmills are making so much juice that at night they're actually giving it away to consumers because they can't handle it on the grid.
And that's why we need expensive nuclear energy,
Exactly.
because the other stuff's
Too
a
cheap
lot
to
cheap,
meter.
and we hate free enterprise.
So if you live in Texas, God forbid, and you
Austin's okay.
Austin's a great town in a bad neighborhood, is what my friend of mine said. If you are living in the boondocks and you're on this deal with the windmills, you can charge your car, do your wash, run your whatevers, everything. You can have all the lights on, blast out the AC, blast out the stereo, and nothing. It's free energy, free electricity, because they don't want to shut the windmills down, and the juice is on the wire. They got to get it off the wire. So you can sign a contract with an electric utility in Texas that gives you free electricity at night, all you can use.
And Harvey Wasserman would take advantage of that because he stays up late.
That's right, man.
Trust me.
They lose money on me. I mean, I'm
Many
at
a
3.
time,
That's
right
it.
at midnight, I get a draft when we used to write together regularly.
Yeah, I'm up at 3, up till 3 usually, and nobody calls. That's what I like. Although I got to tell you, I was working the night shift, and I worked the night shift, and it was around 1 or 2 in the morning, and the phone rang. And I said, "What could that be?" It was my buddy David Weiss, and he said, "Turn on CNN," and it was Fukushima. And I was up. I actually, because of that, I had the first article on the internet about Fukushima, saying, "Thank God it wasn't Indian Point."
Yeah, I remember you got a bunch of pictures early on too. We ran some at the when the rest of the world was reporting that there were no meltdowns or explosions.
Right.
It's like, Harvey, but these pictures don't show roofs. Isn't that where they were storing the radioactive waste?
And radiation from Fukushima is still pouring into the Pacific Ocean, and they're having mass deaths of all these animals, and they're saying, "Oh, it's because it's too warm," and they're probably right. The ocean's getting really warm, but this radiation, the Pacific could be dead, because of the stuff from Fukushima, and that's what we wonderful Ohio ratepayers are funding now on Lake Erie. There's these 2 nuclear plants completely out to lunch. Davis-Bessie's falling apart. Perry is not much better, and Perry has been damaged by an earthquake. And they said, "Oh, everything was fine." I would like to see the video of the guys in the control room trying to operate a nuclear power plant in the middle of an earthquake. I'd like to see them simulate that. I'd like to see us in this studio here talking on the radio as we're getting a 7.0 Richter scale shock. That would be exciting, wouldn't it?
Well, you're spending a lot of time in California
Yes.
now, and they had an earthquake there.
Well, I'll tell you.
Aren't there still nuclear plants in that state?
Well, I got to tell you, Bob, I finally made the National Enquirer. I wrote a piece that said the earthquake hit at a place called China Lake Ridgecrest, and it's less than 200 miles from the Diablo Canyon nukes. 7.1. It was a pretty big earthquake, 7.1, and a 6.0. And I wrote an article, it was in the Free Press, saying that if this earthquake had hit not in Ridgecrest, China Lake, but at Avila Beach, where the nuke is and where there are 12 known earthquake faults that we know of, and it's 45 miles from the San Andreas.
Well, that's where you're going to want to build a nuke, where there's plenty. You
That's
just don't
right.
want one fault. You want a lot of faults.
Well, that's
I mean, who allowed these to be built? I mean,
you know,
you don't consult
the- these are- this
the
is-
earthquake guys.
they did consult the earthquake guy. Their guy, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission's own guy at Diablo Canyon, Michael Peck, their site inspector. You know, every nuclear plant has a site inspector that comes there every day from the NRC and basically lives there. And so Michael Peck filed a report saying, hey, guys, I don't think that this nuclear plant can withstand the earthquake. And they buried his report. Then when it became public, they assaulted it, and they shipped him to Tennessee, and he has since disappeared. We don't know where he is. He's probably in Siberia now. So, you know, so my piece said, if the earthquake had hit at Avila Beach, both reactors at Diablo would now be radioactive rubble, and a giant radioactive apocalyptic cloud would be heading towards L.A. right now. 10 million. You know, there are almost as many people in L.A. County as there are in Ohio. And it would be the apocalypse. Yeah, try evacuating L.A. any time of day, and where are you going to go? So not only would the radioactive cloud have wiped out L.A., and may yet, I mean, it could be happening as we speak, the Central Valley, where a huge percentage of the fruits and vegetables for the United States and nuts comes from, would also be, as they say, toast, completely wiped out. And this is less than 200 miles away. There is no doubt that if if the earthquake that hit within the past few weeks at Ridgecrest China Lake had hit at Avila Beach, this would be happening. Absolutely the apocalypse. Anybody want to get a taste of it, by the way, I strongly urge that you all watch the HBO series on Chernobyl. Devastating. 5 parts. Don't watch it at night, right? Watch it in the day so you can recover. I mean, I've been with this issue for since 1973, although really since 1959 when I did a report on nuclear power in 9th grade. I've been an expert all these years. So, I was blown away by this, what happened, this 5-part series on Chernobyl. It's devastating.
Yeah, I remember some of the documentaries and the Russian conscripts, the soldiers. They'd throw them out there and they'd time them. Okay,
Oh, yeah. Oh, no, they showed that.
Yeah, like 2
90
minutes.
seconds. They said this is the most important 90 seconds of your life. They'd run out there and they'd like
And they had
pick out
shovels.
pick out a rock and throw it over the bridge and then get the fuck out. Ooh, am I allowed to say that? Get the hell out of there. Get the heck out of there. So, you know, I mean, it's it really, you got to see.
They had their own handmade. It's like, I've got some lead here.
Oh no, they
and
were.
some
Oh yeah,
duct tape.
and they were putting them on their crotch. Even the people in the out there in the area, and they did not show. This series was absolutely devastating, but they did not show the worst thing of all, what happened at Chernobyl. They did not show the birth defected children, and you know they are everywhere, and it is the hardest thing to look at in life is
I've
a
met
birth
some
defected
people,
child.
from the Ukraine that have moved here, and they speak of the Chernobyl necklace.
Yeah.
Is that all
Thyroid
of them
cancer,
had
yeah.
their thyroids removed.
Yeah, absolutely. And they didn't deal with that in this. It's quite amazing, actually. I mean, they're very graphic about everything else. And what people have to understand is that the Nuclear Regulatory Commission and the American nuclear industry is a Soviet industry. These people do not tolerate, they went to great extent in this series to show how you couldn't speak out in the Soviet Union about anything. And it's the same here, different little dances. But like I say, Michael Peck at Diablo Canyon, the official nuclear regulatory site inspector, filed a report. We've seen the report. It's up, on the internet. It was buried and people got a hold of it. saying, hey, these reactors should not be operating. They cannot prove that they will withstand a credible earthquake.
Well, what about those like Governor DeWine who says we just don't have enough renewable energy?
Yeah.
Is that we need these
All right, well, this is the
nuclear
killer.
plants?
This is what's absolutely the most infuriating thing about Ohio. Even, I'll say everything, is that there is a clause. It was stuck in the Ohio code by some nuclear toady in the legislature. It's called the setback clause. And I won't go into detail, but the setback clause, for absolutely no reason, there is no ecological or health reason for the setback clause except to make it impossible to do wind farming in Ohio. And it involves 1,000 feet. It requires you to be set back an extra 1,000 feet for no reason whatsoever. It has killed $4 billion worth of wind development in Ohio. And so it's like these people, kill their parents and then complain about being orphans. They have deliberately killed the wind industry in northern Ohio. $4 billion worth of ready-to-go private investment, creating thousands of jobs and completely cheapest electricity you can have anywhere. Enough to supply the entire state, literally, in the North Coast, 20 miles south of the lake, across, right? And then in the lake, which is a whole other story. But this single sentence in the Ohio Code prevents $4 billion of wind development, which would completely replace Perry and Davis-Besse at a fraction of the cost.
And could absorb the workers in the new industry?
Absolutely. And they never talk about it, and they don't want to deal with it, and there it is. Right there in the Ohio Code for zero reason to have it in there, except to kill the wind industry. And then they turn around and say, well, we don't have enough renewables. I mean, really. I bet Mike DeWine doesn't even know about the setback clause. Kasich knew about it. But DeWine, he's he knows everything Trump knows, which is nada. Except maybe, I don't know, you think Mike DeWine is a money launderer?
Yeah, for the Boy Scouts.
Yeah. So anyway, that's the situation. So they have passed HB6. I am confident that we will crush them in a referendum, especially if the Koch brothers
Even
are
if
behind
they
it.
try to sell it as a jobs program.
Oh, they'll do that.
I
Here.
saw those commercials. There's these nice little towns.
Yeah, right.
Harvey
right.
Wasserman's trying to close them down.
Look, here's the question: if they're so concerned about jobs, what'd they do about Lordstown? Where was the legislature's big uproar and $150 million a year bailout for Lordstown?
Nowhere.
Yeah.
But those are unionized workers there, Harvey.
Well, they are at Davis-Besse and Perry too.
Oh, that's right.
It's the IBEW. It's a problem, but but nonetheless, Lordstown. You know what they've done it's called a $1 billion factory. Is they took $1 billion and they built a factory right in Buffalo to make solar panels. And there's 4 they can do. You can do wind components, which Ohio makes a lot of, by the way. Ohio makes a lot of wind components. Allegedly number 2 in the country making wind components, which is amazing that they've banned wind power from Ohio, but they're making wind components in Ohio. So there's solar panels, there's wind, there's batteries, and there's LED efficiency. And each one of them could have a $1 billion factory, 500 permanent jobs. But no, we have to bail out these nuclear plants.
Well, in terms of efficiency, Europe consumes, half,
Right.
even less,
Right.
less than that compared to the U.S.
Right, and Germany is going 100% renewable. All the nuclear plants in Germany are going to be shut down in
And they
2020.
required the utilities to pay for the rooftop conversions.
Well, there's this. It's complicated, but yes, and what happened
And
in
then
Germany?
they get cheaper energy down the road.
Right, although
and
a
they
lot
were
of
talking about they had eliminated, a few nuclear plants that would have been built had they.
they shut 8 immediately. Germany had 19. What happened was there's been a big anti-nuclear movement in Germany, and they have a Green Party, as opposed to here where you can't get one going, but they have a multi-party parliamentary system. So the Green Party, which is totally anti-nuclear, called for a demonstration in 2011. And in between the time they called for it and the time it happened, Fukushima happened. And Angela Merkel, who actually has a brain, she is a chemist actually, said, I think it's time. And that's how it happened. I mean, and she said, and of course the Germans had a big wind industry anyway. What happened was the Green Party in Denmark prevented them from building a nuclear plant. There was a big debate in Denmark. They were going to go nuclear, and the Greens stopped them, and they went to wind instead. In the wind industry, there were 4 very large wind manufacturing companies in Denmark, and they actually they were farm implement companies. That's where they came from. And so they had these 4 companies and narrowed down to one, basically, Vestas. But and then the Germans came in and bought Danish technology. And they made it, they did what the Germans do. And the next thing you know, Germany is deep in the wind. So one of the reasons that they agreed in Germany to shut all the nuclear plants is because the wind industry thought, and this was interesting, they've assumed that they would build a giant wind farm in the North Sea, like we could do in Lake Erie. And then they would send all the energy, all the electricity down to southern Germany, and they would take over from the nukes. But there was also a solar component going on. And what happened was in southern Germany, all these towns built their own solar, and they completely cut the legs out of the utility industry.
Well, we could do that in Ohio. It's
happening, yeah.
The community power
Right.
industry here.
Right. Well, it's happening. There are a bunch of wind farms going in, solar farms going in southern Ohio. So
Private or sort of community?
both. There's a lot. Solar is highly versatile. I mean, it's actually one of the great, if you could call it, technological miracles of the 21st century. It is the technological miracle of the 21st century, which is that all the prognostication and all the predictions for the growth of solar and wind as a technology and batteries and LED have been completely outstripped. I mean, the technology just blew by all the predictions. It's way cheaper and way more prolific than people ever thought it would be. I mean, it's mind-boggling, actually. And so even in Ohio, which doesn't have the greatest sun, is...
Particularly here in central Ohio?
Exactly. Is good for solar in many places, and it's spectacular for wind. One of the reasons that the North Coast... Oh, we're down to 1 minute?
Quick, down to 1 minute. What about Solartopia?
Solartopia. Ohio could have been Solartopia, but they
could have been a contender.
But you got idiots running this, and California will be. And one of the reasons I'm spending so much time in LA is we want to make LA the first 100% renewable city, and that will happen. And then Columbus. So you got to wrap.
Got to wrap up. Harvey Wasserman.
Thank you.
Read his book, Solartopia.
Thank you, Train. Thank you all for having me on.
All right.
Death and hatred to mankind, poisoning their brainwashed minds. Oh, Lord.